I think at this point, instead of trying to do an entire video start to finish of something in the state that I've shown, it's just not going to work. So I'm probably going to end up doing like 2 parts. We'll start with seeing how far we can make with just the crank, and then we'll see where that goes by the time I need to upload something. I don't quite have everything I need for this anyway, so as I wait for those parts, that'll kind of give me a chance to make, I guess, a comprehensive video out of this. So I'm going to show you what happens when you send me a crank. Unfortunately, I already took the rods off, so that's not going to be part of it, but oh well, big deal. Some people actually send them separate anyway, so we'll just pretend like that's the scenario. Once you send me a crank and I have it, I will first just kind of look it over. This one's fine, everything's great, hasn't been hammered on. Both of the bearing surfaces are good, so that's cool. We need to get the sledge strap out. So a lot of guys can't get them out or just don't even attempt, which is fine by me because it is not a fun game. But more often than not, I'm removing the sledge strap, so let's just do that right now. If you're going to put your crank in a vise, always make sure you protect it with like soft jaws or something, so that way you're not marring up that bearing surface. I will hold the camera up so you can see. A lot of the time you're gonna see this boogered up mess where they try and like peen it in so it doesn't want to move. Usually it's just a nice pretty one like this one, but in this case we've got this big ugly mess right here. I hate that, it drives me nuts. I don't know why people think these screws are trying to escape so hard, but I can assure you they do not need to be held in like that. They're not. I have a giant slot head. I'm going to put that in my hammer impact and we're going to beat the crap out of it. So I'll go grab it. I'm going to see if it moves. If it doesn't like to move, then I am going to take a die grinder and clean up that little peen mark, but I always like to kind of see if it's free or not before I do that. Get your giant flat blade. This is from Proto 5408A. I think my Matco guy got it for me, but I've gone through 3 of these, but that's also between a lot of cranks, so your one is going to last quite a while. But I like to get it in, and I apologize, the camera's going to bounce a lot, so just bear with me. But put that in. Hammer impact seems to work really well. We are not moving, so that means we're going to get a die grinder involved. I take that back. We are actually going to try a spot drill first. Sometimes you can clean it up with one of those before you have to get the die grinder out, but I don't know if this is gonna. We'll keep beating on it. You want to be careful because the minute you ruin your slot, you're screwed on at least this method of removal. Obviously, we'll just move on to the next option, but we'll see if it budges now. And then you can introduce heat into it, but I usually wait on that. What a mess. Hold on. We are getting some movement out of it. See if you can. I got it. This is ridiculous. I don't think you guys can see anything. Okay, now we can try it without you guys vibrating all over the place, I hope. Once, I think, okay, it's kind of getting a decent little jump each time, so what we'll try now is, I've got one of these T-handles from my crank grinder chucks, but I like these because I can do a nice even twist on them. I don't think I'm going to get enough. Nope, we're not ready yet. We'll keep with the hammer. I'll try the T-handle again. So, if you can't get it, if there's peen marks, remove those. Then try again. Still isn't budging. You can go get yourself a very large easy out, a large one. Do not attempt with a small one, it's just not worth it. Get a very large one, drill out your center, get that huge easy out in there, and then you can add a little bit of heat. If you're smart, you'll know what enough is. You obviously don't want to get these things too hot. That is not a good idea, but you know, get enough temperature into it where whatever is kind of holding that in place will let go, and then you can properly remove it. But I can't tell you a temperature, but you'll know when you got enough. This is about typical. You will see that in almost any regular rebuild. I wouldn't consider this ridiculously bad, but it also needs done. This is a great time for me to mention pumping anything into the end of this feed is not going to do anything to this. I don't care if you hot tank it, I don't care if you've got solvent, I don't care what you've got. It's just not good enough to me to just pump something into the end of this, because you have what this is equivalent to a rock. I mean, that is, I'm pushing on that pretty hard. I'll break it with a pick. Here, hold on. This is not going to liquefy to the point where it will come out of the oil feed holes in your solvent tank or in your hot tank or whatever. It's just not going to happen. What you will end up doing is just hydrating it enough that as you put mile after mile on this engine, it's just going to slowly break away into your hot oil, and then all of this is going to get fed to your brand new rod bearings that you just installed. So pull that plug. Just pull the goddamn plug, please. It is not worth trying any like shortcut or quick trick, any of that. The quick trick is pull the plug and clean it out properly. And then the other thing I'll mention is just cleaning this out isn't good enough, because once we pull this tube out, that whole, when you actually get the trap out, you're going to find a bunch of sludge on the outside, you know, between the inner diameter of the crank and the outside of the trap. So all that trapped in there, all that is difficult to get out without, you know, really getting in there. I'll show you how I do it, but once you've kind of got that entry opened up, now you're going to start digging away to try and get the actual tube out. The way I do it is with this tap and a nut, and so I'll get this started, get a good bite on it, and then I'll use the nut to draw it out. It's very effective. This is the way I like to do it. You could do it a lot of other ways. You know, get creative, I guess. The locator hole, that locator hole here, if you pull this nut out, or this bolt out, you can use that sometimes to grab it. It's not very successful. I don't usually have good luck doing that, but you could always try it that way. But ultimately the easiest way is this tap and nut trick, but I'll show you how I go about it. It's pretty simple. I will start by tapping it in a little bit, and then sometimes get a few turns on it before I actually will remove the that top flywheel bolt that holds that trap in place. You'll want to remove that, obviously, because without it you're just working against it. But I'll start the tap a little ways first to kind of help me really bite deep, and then once you've got it in there, okay, I think we'll switch now. I'm gonna take the flywheel bolt out. And once that's out, okay, once that's out, then you can try and spin this tap a little bit more. And what that'll do is it will sometimes kind of break the tube free, and it'll allow the extractor function to work a little bit better. Alright, I gotta go answer that. Okay, so I spun it quite a few times, or tried to spin it quite a few times, and it just really wasn't breaking loose. So I don't think we're gonna get the actual tube to spin, but sometimes you can break the tube loose in there by, you know, spinning this enough, but it's not gonna happen for us. So we're gonna start running our nut down. Might take a few tries just based on how well this thing is stuck in here. Now would be a good time to get some solvent down in there, maybe some brake cleaner or something, just to kind of break down that dried up sludge a little bit, but oh shit. Nice and solid. So a good metric of how full it was is where this flywheel bolt was plugged in. It is solid. So there was a lot of sludge in there. A lot more than I think I was kind of leading on earlier. So this is why you want to pull this, because there is no way in hell you are ever going to get anything to flush that out. So that needed to be removed. I'm gonna now show down in it. Let's see what we can. I don't know if this will. Either way, what you can't see is there is a perfect shape of the outside diameter of that trap down in there. So that means not only was the trap full, but then the out and around it was also full. So not good, but it's the exact reason why you want to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape for a little bit, and then I will pile it all up and show you what comes out. Okay, it's empty. That is how much is between the inside of the tube and then what was outside of it. A lot of this was what was compacted, you know, on the outside of the sludge trap. So keep this in mind when you find a bike and you want to do the whole I'm going to get it running first. Just remember that there are very high odds that this is what is inside there, and especially the longer it's sitting, the harder it is. You know, I get some where they got neglected, but it's always been in a position of fresh oil and running, and this comes out as a wet kind of paste. But then this is what happens when it gets, you know, decrepit and old, and it's been in there and fossilizes. So keep that in mind. It's dangerous, I guess, to say the least. But I am going to get this ground next, and so we will do that. But I need to go home and eat dinner with my wife. So I'm going to do that first, and then you guys will see me grinding this crank next. Well, we'll prep it, then we'll grind it. So now that we have successfully removed the sludge trap and all of the sludge, the next step I always check is, does the flywheel need to come off? So, taking a straight edge, you will do two things. One, grab that radius. Oh, look, we don't need to remove it for this side. Come over this side, touch that radius, and we're good there. So anytime you come down, and if I were to touch, you know, 2 points on the flywheel and then come down and land in between the radius there, that would mean we need to remove it. But this one is nice and centered. It does not get removed. I think for this one, I'm actually going to go ahead and blast it for you guys. I don't always blast all the cranks. Every situation is different, down to, you know, just the condition of the crank itself, who it's going to, what they're doing with it, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, this one technically could just use a good degreasing, but just for aesthetics and maybe just for your own benefit of like what you, I guess maybe just to show a good example as to what they look like before and after. It's kind of an unnecessary step in certain situations like this one. I do have like this crank over here that I'll be doing, and it's pretty rusty. It looks not the best. I don't like working with things that are camouflaged with grime and junk. But maybe like this one, once I get all of the lithium grease or whatever it is somebody sprayed on it, once this one gets cleaned up, it probably doesn't need blasted. So it just, like I said, it all depends. But this one, for the benefit of the video, let's blast it. Let's see what happens. We need to put the stroke into the crank grinder. The wheel is already set up for the proper radius, but we do need to set up the stroke. That might be washed out and you can't see it, but that is why I wait so long between cranks, is because I always set up the correct radius. So like I have to do all these matchless cranks, and they have a separate radius, separate stroke, all that kind of stuff. So they're gonna wait, and right now we've got plenty of Triumph ones to do. So let's get this area cleaned up. I think now is a good time to do a quick measurement on this. Again, it'd be something I do at the beginning, but I don't think I showed that because I had actually measured it prior to starting the video. But fat standard is 1.624, and then obviously 1.6235 is the small end of the standard. So this is currently at 1.621.7, so way out of spec on the timing side. Let's do the drive side here. Under yeah, this thing is loose. So that is 4 thousandths out of spec, so that is aggressive on the drive side there. We're going to start on the drive side. We always start on the drive side. It's just my routine. But with it being 4 thousandths, if it is like super exaggerated, like low in the center or out of round or whatever it is, we're going to see that right away. And then obviously once we get our round number, once we've ground all the way around very cleanly and neatly, that's when we're going to know if we need to go further than just a 10,000. So we'll see what we can clean up here. That puts us really close with it already being worn 4 thousandths. But again, we'll try it and see what happens. I'm going to start with putting the stroke in this drive side or the left side, and then I'll jump over here and do the one that you're mounted to. But there's a scale. There's a scale on the face here that tells you what your stroke is at. It's obviously not the most accurate, but it's a good starting place. So I'll put some stroke into it, get close to where we want to be for Triumph, and then I have to adjust my counterweight here. So like right now I've got it at 0 throw. I was doing BSA bushing, so right now it's completely zeroed out and I can easily spin it. Obviously this is a lot of weight, so once you offset this chuck for a stroke, our counterweight needs to do its job, because otherwise this gets unmanageable very quickly. Alright, I'm going to put you back in the stand. Alright, too much in the counterbalance. One more thing I do want to point out before, well, I'm sure at this point there's already been comments made. I have found absolutely nothing wrong with blasting these cranks. I've done a lot of them. I've asked a lot of people their opinions on it. Again, at the end of the day, it's the difference between being able to save a crank and not. So I've done it a lot, and I have not had any problems. I flush these things like crazy. I wash them. It doesn't damage this surface, you know, because I only vapor blast the bearing surfaces. The dry blasting is kept away from these to protect them. But yeah, there's not making any changes to the structure or the function or the ability of this crankshaft. And again, I'm going to flush this thing so many times between the blasting and it being installed into something. So the glass bead just really isn't causing any problems. I know a lot of people have opinions on it, but like I said, I've done so many and I've never had a problem. But yeah, I know that there's some blue hairs that are going to get their New Balances in a wad about that, and I don't know. To me, I don't understand the difference between a crank that's been living on a dirt floor for the past 40 years or in the bottom end of an engine that got full of water, and I'm expected to try and save it, and yet me blasting it is going to somehow cause more damage than just Mother Nature and time. So I just want to clear that up. I haven't had any issue with it. I don't know why there would be any issue with it when it's taken care of properly and taken care of responsibly. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm going to keep doing it, but I thought I should address it. Okay, so I now have my indicator mounted up. Let me see if I can tip you guys. So I've got the dial here, and that doesn't like being pushed. Anyway, so indicators here, and then what I'll start is the overall stroke back and forth, and then we'll worry about if it needs to be rocked fore and after, you know, forward, back, or whatever. And so you'll always use the side you can adjust as your starting point. So I'm going to slide the dial forward until we get contact with it. So now that's zeroed, and then I'm going to come around. Really not too bad. So we need to come towards us about 10 thousandths. So we're going to start with that. I tried to set it up so you could see both things at once, but it's just not going to happen. So for now, you're just going to watch nothing on the crank, really. But I just increased the dial about 10 thousandths. So now we'll tighten it back up. Come around and zero it out. Okay, so that's pretty close as far as our up and down. I am going to kind of narrow in the rock of it before I bring in the other chuck and grab this timing side. So I need to kind of get a ballpark of the adjustment. Again, we're going to start on this side. Zero that out. Okay, so we're too close to us by a pretty significant amount. So I'm going to start by bumping away about an entire revolution of the dial. I always try and get this as close as I can. The first, when I throw it in, you can kind of eyeball it. It's obviously not the most accurate way to do things, but I'm going to loosen it just enough to give myself the ability to push it away. Okay, so that's about a revolution on the dial. So now, spin around. Oh yeah, we're already way closer. Zero that out. Bring it back up. So now, we're within, I think, 15 thousandths of 0. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the other side of the chuck, grab that timing side, and then we can really start narrowing it in. But this has at least gotten the crank itself really close. And then now we can do all the final adjustments with it torqued and kind of ready to be ground as soon as we do get zeroed. So our rough in is done. One thing that always makes me feel really good is when you bite this chuck on and your number doesn't move. That means you know everything's nice and in line. Obviously, if it did bounce, you would investigate whether something wasn't right or whatever. You got a bent crank or something like that. But it just always is very satisfying when you bite down and the dial doesn't jump or anything. So now that we've got both of those snug, I'm going to go ahead. I always torque these. That's the way I was taught, is that way you always get a repeatable tension, and it's not like one day super crazy tight and one day super loose. So it's not a crazy torque. It's just, like I said, consistency is important. Again, same concept. This is the end that we cannot make an adjustment, so that is going to become our 0. So we'll set it here, spin us around, and we are, so what we actually need to come towards us. We went away, so we need to pull it towards us, and I'm going to just bump it up in very small increments. Currently it's about 5 thousandths, so I'm going to just kind of go about 1 thousandth per side to start with. Very small little bumps. Okay, so we're pretty close on the stroke, so now we will do the forward and back, the fore and after, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to check it kind of opposing the two oil galleys. That's the easiest way to kind of keep yourself square, but also if the chuck bodies are vertical. So zeroed out, flip it around to the other side, and we're too far away by about a little over 10 thousandths. So we're going to pull it towards us. We'll start with probably 4, a little under 5. Is going to be the goal. So we're going to put our pins locked in. I think I can do this with you guys where you're at. So loosen our 2 clamps. So like I said, we went away too much, so now we need to push it towards us. So I'm going to rotate up, which is going to send the journal towards us. Oop, that's too far. Okay, so that's about a 4 thousandths correction. Put the clamps back on. Oh yeah, we might be about as close as we're going to get. So the other thing you have to kind of remember, I'm going to show you guys here. So if you watch, that needle bounces pretty sporadically, and normally on like a pretty typical, just standard worn out journal, it's going to be a much smoother kind of response, but that jumping and kind of sporadicness is pretty common when you have a journal that's as worn as this one, because it's not round anymore, so you're seeing all those little imperfections, and you know the movement is going to be much more exaggerated. So it's something you would kind of expect out of a journal in this condition. So the other thing I was going to point out is, if you look on that, now that this is kind of clean and all one color, if you look at the radius, it's nice and smooth into the flat section of the journal here, but as you come around to that hammering side, it develops this lip. You can just maybe barely see it, but that kind of is a dead giveaway that this is no longer round, because that radius is still where the original, you know, material would have been, and then this lower section is where it's worn out. And so that's another kind of indicator of abuse, or you know, excessive wear. So anyway, that journal is now as zero as it's going to get, and so we're going to get going and get that stone in there and get it cleaned up and see where we're at. Okay, so now there's a part where I stick my head in the machine to get the stone close to the journal. So I've got to kind of set the stop. Kind of realizing, okay, so that's the stop there. So now I'm going to use the wheel to get myself close. Okay, so now that, and now I'm going to go 2 turns away. 1, 2. You didn't see that, but trust me, I did. That gives me a safe zone. I am now safe to move things around, because I always know that I am 2 turns away from that stone touching that journal. So now I'm going to get this thing turning, and once this is spinning, we'll turn the wheel back on, get some coolant on it, and I will start coming in on it. So I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me at all, actually, because I just realized how loud that inverter is, but let's go! Okay. Coolant's flowing. I'm going to go 2 turns in. 1, 2. Now we can kind of start sneaking up on it. And we're going to listen and look. I'm listening to kind of, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it, but you'll start to kind of hear the tone changes as the stone gets closer and closer, as it's like shearing the coolant. You'll be able to hear that change. I'm going to try and talk and focus at the same time, and I'm not good at it. We also want to get, okay. Okay, you're starting to be able to hear it. You can start seeing the light spots, the shiny spots on the journal. You can hear it's getting louder. I do want to kind of create a little bit of noise with that side of the wheel getting into that radius a little bit. So I'm going to kind of slowly sneak into the radius. Okay, that should be a good amount there, and we're going to keep coming in. And what I'm trying to do is create a entire surface for my steady rest to touch, so I can jump over to the right side and focus on that right side radius. But I don't think you guys are going to be able to see this, but as you come in on a worn out journal, it will be like tiger striped because of all the high and low spots. And that's definitely happening here to kind of prove the fact that we have a pretty uneven journal. But I think we're about cleaned up enough that I can back off. So now we've got this band of freshly ground journal. It's nice and round, it's flat, it's true. We've gotten into the radius almost perfectly. There's just a little bit of a spot along this edge here that didn't quite get into, but overall it looks really good. I'm very happy with that. We're gonna have a good clean radius when we're done with this thing. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna kind of sneak up, get as close as I can as a setup for this right side, and then once I know we're good there, then we're gonna go into actually starting to get some numbers on this. 1, 2, 3. So now I'm going to bring my steady rests in and just touch them. So now I can kind of start sneaking up on it. Same situation, we're going to sneak up on it, listen for it, watch for it. Should be able to kind of... Alright, we're starting to touch. I'm going to kind of creep in here a little bit. Keep pushing in a little bit more. Now when I'm doing this side, I'm definitely going to want to go past what I got done on that left side. So then that way we got a good even surface to take a measurement on and know where we're at. So that's why it's important on that first cut to not go too crazy, because it's really only just a surface for that steady rest. Alright. God, look at that. Just what a fun little before and after, dude. So you got that dull, clean, you know, when we blasted up the old one, and then you jump over here and just look at that. Oh my god. Oh my god, it looks so good. I love it. Okay. I'm gonna get a measurement on that, and then we're gonna decide where we're going. So I'm gonna set this camera down for a second. Okay, so we just did some quick table math, and 10 under is 1.614. Again, I said standard was 1.624, and so obviously 10 would be that. Anyway, our current number, what cleaned that up, is 1.6156. That does not give us enough room to do a clean, good job. By the time I get set up on the other side, do a clean, do a cross grind, I just don't have a lot of confidence. Because of the 14, what you would do is you would grind to 2/1000ths more than that, so it would be 16. And then I would jump back over to the left side, grind, and then come back to the right, doing a traverse grind, phase grind, whatever you want to call it. Because of a lot of factors, this does not give me enough room to do a good, clean job. I've tried this. I just never get my goal. I always end up having too much heat into the journal. I don't have just the room to have accuracy. That being said, we're going to go to 20, which is 1.604. And I have plenty of room to do that work. So what we need to do now is set up our dial indicator, or grinder gauge, our dial gauge. We need to set this bad boy up to an accurate range, I guess, so then we can use it. But it's set up for BSAA bushing journals right now, so it needs to be opened up a little bit. So I'm going to do that really quick. And then we will grind to 1.606, and then that will give me enough room to play and have an accurate, good grind. So that is where we're at. Table math. Okay, so our table math says 11 and 6/10 thousandths. And so if you come over here, throw our grinder gauge on, and I don't know if I can, okay, there. We're set up. So I will now grind to 2 thousandths. Once my needle is there, I'll bail, and then we'll double check it and make sure that that is an accurate reading. Again, sometimes if it says I'm 2 thousandths away and then I measure it, because of current temperatures and blah blah blah, all that fun stuff, it may be a little inaccurate. So I use that to get an accurate zero grind, just based on how it responds. So again, that's why we're going to 20 instead of just attempting this 10 that we're so close to. But this is a safer, better bet. Trust me. Alright, we got our 2 turns away. We are, oh, get that steady rest ready. Okay. We're ready to go. Now we're gonna bring our grinder gauge in. I'm gonna point you guys at it. As I sneak up here, and I'm gonna back off. So this is kind of a good opportunity. You can really see the difference of 10 thousandths. Let me get you down here on the journal. You can really see the difference here of that 10 thousandths lip there. So now I'm gonna double check to make sure we are actually truly 2 thousandths fat of what we were wanting. And then we'll come over here onto the right side of the, or the left side of the journal, and then I'll grind to 0 and then grind across to our right. Okay, so I bailed when I was like a needle's width away from the 2. That was the goal, the 2 thousandths away, and I just measured it. Man. Oh my god. Okay, well, either way, I'm dead nuts on what I wanted, so I'm super excited. I wish I could show you, but this camera is not meant for that purpose, and so it's just not going to happen, so you're going to have to trust me. Either way, I'm happy. I'm going to jump over to the other side. I need to get this thing done. Look at that. Look at it. It's gorgeous. Hell yeah. Alright. I'm gonna jump over here, do this. You're not watching me do it. I'm gonna get it done, and then we're gonna move on to the polish. So, get out of my way. Alright, so now I take a ball stone to the oiling holes to take the razor blade edge it's got on it right now. So I'm gonna hit both of these, and then we will be able to do a polish on it. So I'll hit them, and then I blow it all off and make sure we're all clear. We don't want to have a bunch of gnarly stuff. I did rinse this in hot water already to get the coolant off. If you don't do that and then you hit the belt on it, it will actually like burn the coolant, and then it's a really big mess. So you gotta rinse this off. So that's rinse number 3 for those counting. Anyway, I'm gonna do this. You're in my way right now, so hold on. All right, let's see if I can do this without blocking you. maybe you can kind of get the idea. Now I'll flip it back over. Do the other side. I'll tell you, no matter how many of those you do, it is nerve-wracking. I don't know if you can see that or not, but... Alright, so right now the journals look okay. They're not the prettiest. They kind of have... they have a line from the grinder gauge and a little bit on the steady rest from this one. But anyway, we are now going to hit them with the polisher right after... Alright guys, so outside of putting the sludge trap back in, the crank's done. We are now 20 thousandths under. I was going to also do the rods in this video, but I think it's already too long. I did a long video last week and it didn't do very well. I don't know if that's because it was BSA related and no one cares, or if it actually is just the fact that it's just too long. So this one I'm going to try and keep a little tighter, see how it performs. You know, the feedback is great whenever you guys kind of tell me which way you want me to go with these. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to create a resource for understanding and get more comfortable with these things. So, again, I appreciate all the advice or comments or however you want to put it. But, yeah, so we'll see how this one goes. I will be doing an entire assembly video for this engine, so there will be more on it. But as far as just focusing on grinding a crank journal, we're done here. So hopefully that helps. Maybe the sludge trap section was worth something. I don't know. But yeah, so reassembly isn't too complicated, but I'm just going to end it here. Otherwise, we're going to get in over our heads.